Hello and welcome to the Management Channel. In this session we're going to talk about management making decisions and the decision-making process. And we're also going to look a little bit at generating ideas. So the relationship of problems to decision-making is a problem exists whenever objectives are not being met. Problem solving is a process of taking corrective action to try to meet those objectives. Decision-making is the process of selecting an alternative course of action that will solve a problem. As mentioned in a previous lecture, managers perform four primary functions: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. First decision is whether to take any corrective action. Managers get paid to perform two functions: make efficient decisions and solve problems. So decision-making is defining problems and choosing a course of action from among many alternatives. It's also the process of selecting an alternative course of action that will actually solve the problem. There is an appreciative inquiry, which is the cooperative search for the best in people, organizations, and the world around them. At the heart of AI is asking questions. Supervisors should look to their people for their input. Their people know more about the problems than probably you are aware of as a manager. There are different types of decisions. There's program decisions, which are solutions to repetitive and routine problems provided by policies, procedures, or rules. For example, starting your car. You follow a procedure every time. Non-program decisions are solutions to unique problems that require judgment, intuition, and creativity. For example, trying to decide which color to paint your car. So first, let's talk about rational decision-making. Decision-making is a process of choosing a solution from available solutions, and there are several methods utilized. So with the rational decision-making, it's a systematic process of defining the problem, evaluating all your alternatives, and choosing a rational, optimal solution. The first step is to identify and define the problem. A problem exists when there's a gap between a desired state and the existing state. Step 2 is to identify the decision criteria, or the standards that you're going to use to guide your judgments and decisions. The next step, after identifying the decision criteria, is to weigh the criteria. One method is absolute comparisons. It's a process in which each decision criterion is compared to a standard or ranked on its own merits. Another method is relative comparisons. Here, each decision criterion is compared directly with every other criterion. The next step is to generate possible alternative courses of action that could solve the problem. Then evaluate each alternative choice against each criterion, and then compute the optimal decision. It's performed by multiplying the rating for each criterion by the weight that you assign for that criterion, and then summing up the generated scores. The item with the best score would be the most likely choice. For example, in this decision matrix, you can see the criteria here on the left-hand side, the weight assigned to it as to how important it is, the score is given, and then the weighted score, 5 times 0.20, and so on. And you can see this one got a 3.9. Now if you rated another system and got a 4.2, that would be the score, and this decision matrix provides you to go with that resolution. Managers have to operate in a perfect world scenario with no real world constraints. In theory, fully rational decision makers maximize their decisions by choosing the best solution. But unfortunately, sometimes managers prefer what's called satisficing, which is choosing a good enough alternative, but probably not the best solution. Choosing the easiest and quickest solution is to apply a band-aid effect instead of resolving. So the decision-making process is analyze the situation, generate options, select the best option, implement the option, assess the effectiveness of that option, how well is it doing, and a more defined process is define the problem, analyze the problem and gather facts and information, establish your decision criteria, develop alternatives, evaluate the alternatives, select the best alternative, and follow up and appraise the results. So in defining the problem, you want to distinguish the symptoms from the cause of the problem. So you list the observable and describable occurrences or symptoms that indicate the problem exists, determine the root cause of the problem, remove the cause should actually cause the symptoms to disappear or cease, like turning it on and turning it off. But if they don't get removed, then you haven't really defined the problem. Symptom, customer dissatisfaction. Cause, poorly trained employees. Solution, implement customer relations training program for all employees. So you want to analyze the situation, determine the real root cause and the effects of the situation, and then get a consensus on the true situation, and then set the objective. So in generating options, establish criteria for the option before generating solution options. Methods for generating some option ideas are brainstorming. Gather your team together and collect as many ideas as possible. No idea or recommended solution is dumb. Listen to all of them. Nominal group technique. Everyone creates an idea on paper that then presents it to the team. Each solution is discussed until a consensus is reached by the group. And simplifying. Reduce to smaller segments to attempt to reach the real root cause. Brainstorming is a free flow of ideas in a group while suspending judgment aimed at developing many alternatives to a problem. So you want to defer all judgment of ideas. Don't think that any idea is too dumb. Look for as many ideas as you can. Encourage freewheeling, and you'd be surprised sometimes when somebody brings something up, you can hitchhike on the existing idea and go, yeah, that's right, what about this? So one of the tools you can use also is a fishbone diagram. It's a cause and effect approach to consider the possible interrelatedness of problem causes in decision making. So what you do is you put your material problems here, your machine plant, measurement policies, methods and procedures, the environment, and men and people. What all ideas could go in there that could cause the problem? And then you evaluate them. One of the other tools that you can use is a decision tree. And here you see the subjects are maintain business as it is, expand the business, or sell the business. And here you see some various options, like work full-time doing all the work, or hire some help and work part-time. You can put weighted factors on this, and we'll show you an example here in a bit. And then the why tree, a combination of 5 W's. You ask yourself why. Why did that happen? Nobody told them. Why? No one's job to tell them. Why? Have no supervisor. Why? So you just keep going until you find the absolute bottom line answer. Methods for generating option ideas is exaggerated objectives, increasing to far beyond the expectations to ensure that everything was considered. New perspectives bring in someone with no knowledge to introduce a new and or different viewpoint. We did find that one time in a meeting that somebody who did know nothing about the problem brought up an idea that helped us find the resolution. Ethical considerations, ethical tests, considerations or guidelines to be addressed in developing and evaluating the ethical aspects of your decision alternatives. Should be like a legal compliance test, a public knowledge test, long-term consequences test, examine your motives test. What does your inner voice tell you, and is it fair to everybody involved? Optimizing is selecting the best alternative. Example, finding the fill station, selling the cheapest gas. Satisfying is selecting the alternative that meets the minimal criteria decision. buying gas at the first filling station you come to after running out of gas on the highway. Defined better, there are two primary decision-making models. Rational model, or the classical model. The decision maker attempts to use optimizing, selecting the best possible solution, and the bounded rationality model, where the decision maker uses satisficing, selecting the first alternative that meets the minimal criteria for solving that problem. So you can see, where do you go from here? That really depends on where you want to go. So you have to look at experience, intuition, advice from others, experimenting, and whatever quantitative data you have to help solve that problem. Guidelines to decide whether groups should be included in the decision-making process. If additional information would increase the quality of the decision, involve all of those who can provide that information. If acceptance of the decision is critical, involve those whose acceptance is very important. If people's skills can be developed through participation, involve those who need the development opportunity so they too can learn part of the decision-making process. And if the situation is not life-threatening and does not require immediate action, involve others in the process. To understanding your decision-making style, analyze a recent decision from the following perspective. What worked? What actually happened as a result of my decision? What feedback did I receive about the success of a decision, and what style did I use to make the successful decision? What didn't work? Why didn't it work? What caused the differences between the intended outcome and what actually occurred? What kind of feedback did you receive about a failed decision? What decision-making style did you use to make the failed decision? So there are three basic decision-making styles. Reflexive makes quick decisions without taking the time to get all the information needed and without considering all the alternatives. Reflective takes plenty of time to make decisions, gathering as much information as possible and analyzing several alternatives. And then the consistent style tends to make decisions without either rushing or wasting time. This group tends to have the best record for making good decisions. Sometimes time doesn't permit, but that is the best mode. Most problems do not require immediate answers. Applying participative supervision to a problem request, how extensive is the problem? Does the situation need an immediate response? Who else, as far as stakeholders, is affected by the problem? Should they, the stakeholders, be involved in this discussion? And ask if the employee has thought through the problem, and does the employee have an idea of what the end result should be? What does the employee recommend, and why? Selecting an option, three key questions you need to ask first. Is the option applicable? Is the option practical? Does this option have any risks? To select to choose the best option, weigh the pros and cons, make a T-chart. The plus on one side, the negative on the other. Use a decision matrix. List each option and give it a weight factor. Set column headings with objectives along the top. Then see how each option fits into relation to the objectives. Use a decision tree. The decision tree is used when there are a series of decisions and outcomes which lead to other decisions and outcomes. So, include all possible alternatives, and states of nature include doing nothing. Enter the payoffs at each branch. Determine the expected value of each branch and prune the tree to find the alternative with the best expected value. So in this example, we want to look at, do we want to purchase CAD or hire and train engineers? Or do we want to do nothing? So purchase sales, we could have high sales, which the probability is only 0.4, or low sales, which is a probability of 0.6. And so we carry that same numbers and categories down to the next branch. Here we can see the revenue would be $2,500,000 minus $2,500,000 minus $1 million for manufacturing costs. That'd be $40 times 25,000, and minus $500 for the CAD cost. Our net would be $1 million. Using the other low sales, we'd have a net loss of $20,800. Purchase the CAD system would give us a net of $388,000. And you can see our net here would be $875,000. Low sales would be $25,000 versus a loss up here and a higher net up here on purchasing CAD. So we would just hire and train engineers. 3 steps you should take to ensure successful implementation: design the checklist, assign tasks, and create a timeline. In implementing an option, the checklist you create should include resources needed, the tasks to be completed, who is responsible to complete each task, how much time is required to complete each task, assign tasks to a specific person or group, and create a timeline for completion of each task. And I recommend to track that using a Gantt chart. The chart shows you the activities that have to take place, which week they start in, some overlap, which week they need to be finished by. So it's helpful giving you a visual approach to the project. And you can see here, service for Deltjet, they use a Gantt chart. And here they show the baggage, fueling, cargo, galley servicing, etc., and when it should be done. Some of the ways you can assess effectiveness of the option is to administer questionnaires to people affected by your decision, conduct interviews with people affected by the decision, conduct assessment tests before and after implementation of the option. And there are 5 quantitative methodologies. There's a break-even analysis. It occurs at the point where no profit or loss occurs. You're just breaking even with the investment versus when you start to make a profit. Capital budgeting, used to analyze alternative investments in assets and to calculate your return on investment for feasibility. Linear program, used to determine the optimum allocation of resources such as time, money, space, material, equipment, and so forth. Queuing theory, focusing on the waiting time. It helps balance the ratio of employees to customer service. And the probability theory. Decisions are made based upon conditions of risk with a probability factor assigned to the possibility of success and failure. So we want to do an example. To figure your break-even analysis, first determine how much profit you make per product or part. The decision should be, if we add a new line which costs us $750,000, how many units do we have to sell to break even? Your profit, not the selling cost, needs to be used. So let's say you make $50 profit per part. So you divide 50 into 750,000, and it says after you have made 15,000 units and sold them, you break even, which means you have paid back the 750,000. You haven't really attained a profit yet. So, should you increase capacity? A standard approach to choosing among alternative processes or equipment, whether to invest or not. Also, to determine the point where units produced and sold will equal where you will start making profit on the process or equipment. The actual purpose is to determine the point where the units produced and sold illustrate the point where total revenue and total cost are equal, or where the breaking even point is. You can see here in the chart that at 14,800 copies produced and sold is when you start to make profit. Meanwhile, this is a loss you've incurred. Purchase cost of the process or equipment divided by the price per unit minus the cost per unit gives you how much profit you should make. I recommend, if you create a break-even analysis, use the top formula. So, suppose you want to purchase a new computer that will cost $5,000. You'll use it to process written orders from customers who are going to pay you $25 for each of that service. The cost of your labor, electricity, and the form used to place the order is $5 per customer. So, how many customers will we need to serve to permit the total revenue to break even with our costs? Again, here we go, the same formula you've seen before. Total fixed cost, $5,000. Unit price to customer, $25, minus a variable cost, $5, means that you have to service 250 customers before you pay off the computer. 3 decision-making criteria. Certainty. Each alternative's outcome is known in advance. You know what's going to happen. Risk. The outcome is unknown, but you can assign probabilities to each outcome as to whether it will succeed or fail. And uncertainty. Your lack of information or knowledge makes the outcome of each alternative unpredictable, such that no probabilities can really be determined. Dealing with risk. What does the term risk mean? It's the possibility that you may not achieve your product, schedule, or resource targets because something unexpected happens or something planned fails to happen. Project risk is greater when the longer your project lasts, the more time you have between preparing your project plan and starting the work, and the less experience you or your organization or your team members have. The newer your project technology is also when project risk is greater. What are negative risks? They're also called threats, and they potentially have a detrimental effect on one or more of your project objectives, such as maybe causing you to miss a deadline. Positive risks are called opportunities, and they potentially have a beneficial effect on your objectives, such as allowing you to complete tasks with fewer personnel or hitting a milestone earlier than expected. What are the steps to take to determine, evaluate, and manage risks in your project? Identify the risks. Assess the potential effects of those risks. Develop some plans for mitigating the effects of those risks or putting them at bay. Monitor the status of your project's risk throughout performance. Inform key audiences of all risks involved with the project. Product risk instead of project risk is that technology may not produce the desired results. Schedule risk is tasks using the new technology may take longer than anticipated. Resource risk. Existing facilities and equipment may not be adequate to support the use of the new technology. So, what is avoidance? It's an act to eliminate the risk factor that gave rise to the risk. Transfer is pay someone else to assume some or all of the effect of the risk. Example, a plant that makes plastic parts but needs them chrome dipped. Chroming is a very technical process, and you're better off getting a company that does do nothing but chroming, so you transfer it to them. Mitigation, either reducing the likelihood that a risk occurs or minimize the negative consequences if it does occur. So thank you for watching. I hope this was somewhat clear. It was long, and you have a great day.